Welcome to the Spice of Life podcast, where we take bold risks, build real wealth, and use money as a tool for freedom and legacy. I'm Luke Spicer, and each week we uncover the principles of ownership, independence, to business and life. Whether you're an investor, entrepreneur, or tradesperson, this show is about creating freedom today and legacy for tomorrow. Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Spicer Life podcast. Today on the show, I have the rogue therapist, Ashley Mariani. Did I get that right? I did, right? I
You
was like,
did,
I think I
yes.
did, yeah. And she runs a therapy clinic called Mind Online.
I do.
Welcome to the show, Ashley.
Thank you. I'm
Yeah,
excited.
I'm excited to talk to you a little bit more and dig in because we met like over a year ago at
Hmm.
the um Reclaiming Birth conference.
Yep.
You were there talking, doing a thing, and I remember coming up to you. There was a like a vendor night on the first
Hmm.
night first night of the show, and I was just wandering around meeting everybody and talking to everybody, and then you had your booth set up and we were just chatting, and I was like, oh, this is pretty interesting. And then I had Kristen Nagel on the show, and she had mentioned you, and I said that to you before, that my wife was like, well, you got to get this Ashley on, she sounds super interesting. And I'm like, she is interesting, and she talks about a wide range of subject matter for clients. And so tell me, let's back up a bit before we get started on what you're doing now. How did you even get into doing what you do now? What made you want to go down that path?
Oh, well, I think like every other therapist, dysfunctional family sends you down the path of being a therapist. And don't think I've met a therapist yet who hasn't had a tinge of dysfunction in their family. So, I mean, the process of becoming one is 4 years undergrad, 2 years master's degree. So you kind of have to be in it to do it. And so I think that it was just one of those things where it was kind of like, I don't feel understood in my family dynamic and I don't feel like I belong. So let me feel what therapy is like for myself. And I went to therapy, and I think that, some of it was helpful and some of it wasn't. And I just kind of committed to I feel like I could do this differently. I didn't know what that looked like at the time, or I didn't know what being rogue meant, back in my undergrad years, which was in sexuality, marriage, and family studies. And then just kind of, destiny takes over and you end up where you're supposed to be. And here I am now.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it's neat that you said that because like I often thought that I was like, man, you meet a lot of psychologists or therapists, right? And then you talk to them and you know them outside of them like practicing and just like talking to them as human beings or whatever. And then you find out, or like I find out they're a therapist, and I'm going, wait, you're helping people? Like, there's been a few like that where I'm like, whoa, you're the one giving somebody else advice. Okay.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, and I mean, obviously listening and then being able to process stuff and then help people see the I mean, you give me the word that I'm looking for. I want to say like shortcomings or whatever, but that's probably not what I should say. But like the gaps,
Perspective.
right? They have
Yeah.
gaps and
Hmm.
things. And so for you to go through and do all this, then like you went through obviously just university and
Hmm.
and did that as a therapist. When you're going to become a therapist, do you decide as you're going along where you're going to focus your energy, or how does that even work? Like,
Yeah, I think so if I would love to have a copy of my yearbook from high school, but in high school, under my picture, when it has kind of like what you aspire to be, I had always said sex therapist, even in my high school yearbook. And I
okay.
think that kind of like sent the teachers a little bit off to left field, not expecting an answer like that. And all of my social studies projects were, I think I did archetypes of abusive men in one of my high school studies projects. I did something about affairs in high school. I painted a lot of like feminine, erotic paintings in art class. So obviously it was part of my narrative from the very beginning. And then so when I went into undergrad, I took sexuality, marriage, and family, which was originally a 4 year program. The year that I was meant to graduate, they tried a pilot project, which I don't know if they continued, but to add a 5th year for a thesis. And so my thesis was on infidelity. And at the time, my parents were going through a divorce because my father had an affair. And so this felt very cathartic for me to research infidelity and go deeper into infidelity to try to understand what was happening. After I graduated from the 5 year undergrad program, I did 2 years in applied counseling, and that gave me more practical skills and tools to be in person with somebody. And then 2 years in my master's degree. So, all in all, 9 years of post secondary education, which is fine because I'm just a forever learner. But I would say I didn't know that I would be working with parents at any point in that. That was a big piece. I didn't know that I'd be working in the birth world at any point in that. I knew that I wanted to work with sexuality from, again, like I said, the get go. And so I specialized in my graduate studies in individuals, families, and groups instead of more of the um, social justice piece. So you can kind of go off into two realms. You can write policy and be involved in social justice, or you can work with individuals, families, and groups. And so that's what I did. And my placements were both at a Catholic high school and in a private practice. And so the private practice felt really great. But I knew, which I will say, this is my biggest criticism of the field, is that it's now very saturated and you can find a therapist everywhere. Um, but back when I was experiencing, trying to obtain some firsthand experience in the field, it was not part of the expected um, order of things to go right into private practice upon graduation. Now you find everybody going into private practice upon graduation, which I think personally is unethical. Um, and so I spent years at a not for profit and was probably burnt out by the end of it. But I bumped elbows with the Crown attorneys, with um, probation officers, with detectives. I ran partner assault response programs for the region. I did male survivors of sexual assault. I worked with victims of domestic violence. And so I got to experience things that most therapists don't get to experience now, which I'm very grateful for. And working with volatile couples gave me skills to be able to work with non volatile couples in my private practice. So after becoming a mom, then I specialized in perinatal mental health because you don't know that you need that support until you become a mom.
Right, yeah, and I guess and like I mean there's I guess there's two sides when I think of like a sex therapist. I'm like, one, you're dealing with like victims, I'm assuming, right? Or people that are victims of that type of trauma and abuse. And then the other side is like when I think about it, I'm like, oh, like we're lacking sex in a marriage or whatever like that. Not us, but like just in general. And like
Hmm.
and then like we need to go get help or something. Do I have that right?
Totally. Yeah. And a lot of the times they intersect anyways, to some degree. So I mean, there really is the not for profit side of sex therapy where you are supporting more victims, and then I would say there's the more quote unquote like privileged private practice of supporting, kink and marriages and infidelity and desire discrepancy and that kind of thing.
Right, and I suppose if somebody's having, and I mean, I'm sure this is just a broad statement, but like when people are experiencing issues in their marriage, it could be stemming from somebody that had like trauma from the past or whatever, and something is sparking that, and then they have to work through those, and one side could just be like, I don't really understand what's wrong, and you don't know, and if you don't talk, and then they come for, do you see most of your patients, do they come from you because there's like this? this like symptom, and they're like, well, we want to treat this symptom, but you're like, well, like any treatment, you're like, wait, we got to back way up and we got to treat the cause, because otherwise if we just be like, just be intimate, well, that's not gonna just fix it. But often, like, and I think I'm just putting myself as in a man's thing and listening to like guys and like, oh, the sex in our marriage is like gone down, and I'm like, well, are you being the same guy that you started with when you were dating her? Like, if you were not doing all of those, then like, what are you doing? And I can often think that, like, even in my own life, like, well, I'm the same. It's like, nah, bro, no, you're not. Like, not all the time. And when you are, then everything is good. So it's like, but that's coming from it from a probably a logical standpoint, just being able to evaluate things in my own life because I do it all the time. So then to be like, well, hey, if this is out of balance, it's like, okay, well, what can I do to contribute to make this better? It's like,
Yeah.
oh, do this,
Yeah.
this. So what's your preferred place to be at right now? Like what's the base of what you do then? Or the bulk of what you do, I should say.
I would say that's the beauty of kind of like being an entrepreneur and being in private practice is that my business can evolve based on the chapter of life that I'm in. And having associates at my clinic, I can collect um, niches, let's say, that they prefer to work on. So right now I have Molly that works as an associate in my clinic, and Molly graduated about a year ago, and her niche is working with first responders. So she specializes in trauma, and she's worked in crisis, and she loves working with first responders, and not just in work related issues, but in whatever first responders are going through, because there's that layer, right? So if you're a first responder and you've experienced a loss in your family, or if you're a first responder and you are postpartum, then there's all these different layers that impact the work that you do. So where I'm at right now, I'm really, really loving supporting couples in particular with finding their sensuality together again, finding that dynamic of like, we live together, we're roommates, we're parenting, we're co-parenting, but like where's the eros, where's the sensuality, where's the connectedness, and not just saying like, oh, we're not having sex, so there's a problem. Let's get to the reason, like you had said, why are we not having sex? Where's the polarity missing here, or where are the needs met, or where are we miscommunicating?
Yeah. Which is like, I mean, I think probably as couples that come to you, if they're at that point, at least they're being forward thinking, I would hope for the most part, where they're like, hey, listen, we recognize something's off. We want to come together and like make things, better, which is why we're here. So then you've got buy-in from both sides. How often do you feel that you come where it's like one side's begrudgingly coming and one really wants it and one's just like doing it because they're like, I have to?
I mean, stereotypically, as you can expect, I think a lot of the, I will say complainants, because I don't really have a better terminology for that. The complainants are the women, and they've reached a breaking point and have said, I don't know what to do anymore to make this better. You're wanting sex, let's say. I'm wanting emotional connection. You're saying that you can't give me emotional connection until I give you sex. I'm saying that in order to want to have sex with you, I need emotional connection. You're not hearing what I'm saying. You're thinking I'm purposely trying to make your life hell. So let's talk to a therapist. And then usually the man will say, I don't need a stranger to tell me how to live my life. I don't need to tell
Oh.
some stranger my problems. And so I would say 92% of the time, it is the man who is coming begrudgingly.
Really? Well, okay. And so that's interesting that you say that, because I would think that, yes, typically women would be the ones that would like want to go to therapy, whereas men were often like, well, just shove it down and don't talk about it or deal with it. And then this is something that I actually really struggled with, and my wife and I talk about this a lot, not like in the past. Because like when I was married the first time, I had a lot of these like situations where I was like, what is going on? And then naturally you like reach outside of your marriage, not for like advice, but at the time I was like looking to older people to be like, hey,
Consult.
like yeah, like is this normal? And they're like, welcome to marriage, bud. You know, like that was kind of like the older guys, like that just happens. And I was like, well, that's stupid. And I never had really good examples of what I would consider super healthy, awesome marriages. It was like just your average marriage, right? Where like, well, now you got kids, so now you're not connected. And you go this way every morning, and then you like maybe come back together, but not really. And then you're like, well, now I want this. And she's like, oh, hey, chill out, dude. And and so I was like, oh, this is just really, and I just kept digging in deeper, like this is what it is. And I spent 7 years in the basement, like sleep, right? In my first marriage, we were married for 10 years. And it was like I slept like alone. And when I finally was like, I started working a lot on myself, like, stop drinking, all these different, development stuff, working out a lot more, getting and just trying to be like that guy from the beginning. And it was like it didn't matter. It didn't fix it. And one day I was like, I'm 32 years old. Like I want to live my life and be like in a fun relationship and have like a best friend, and I want a divorce. And then I sought out what was missing, right? And then, that wasn't filling the void because everything that was good wasn't good. And then now that I'm remarried, I'm like, wow, I have like everything that I want. And I think that even now, like we're in a really good place. And sometimes I wonder that. I'm like, I wonder what would happen if we did go and do something like that, like therapy, where we're already really good, but like let's work on stuff where we could make it even better. Do you know? Because we
Hmm.
do that in other areas. We're like, well, we're gonna go to the gym. We're gonna go to a course on finance so we can be even better in our investing business and things like that, right? Like, oh, I'm gonna take some courses on how to have a good podcast. But then it's like these areas of our lives that are actually so sacred, people just don't do it until there's a problem. And I'm
Hmm.
like, that's sad to me, I think. So when you have a couple, I mean, obviously I know everybody's different. I have to keep saying that, but I feel like I need to preface that I'm not saying that I understand it's not 100% thing. When you have like we'll go through a traditional couple where yeah, the men's upset that they're not having sex anymore and but it's the wife that comes to you more often than not.
Yes.
Huh. And I wonder that. I'm like, could you like then I come from like a marketing side. I'm like, men, you want more sex? Come see me. And then they're like, hey, I want to come.
Totally.
It's like it could be
Literally, yes, yes. Um, I will say that I have seen marketing from a few therapists from the States that are women that have used that marketing, and it feels very icky.
of course it does. Right away, even as I said that as a joke, it's like it makes me feel like I'm gonna click on her page and then I'm gonna see she's an OnlyFans model, and I'm like, wait, she's not a therapist? It's like,
Yes, and there is one that cycles through my advertising. I don't follow this particular therapist, but every time she pops up, I'll send it to one of my colleagues and we just have a good chuckle about it because it does honestly feel like OnlyFans marketing, even though she's a licensed professional.
right.
And then that's kind of when you have to figure out, okay, so if women are looking for therapy and they are essentially saying something's wrong, something's wrong. I can't change him. I can't make him hear me. So am I saying it incorrectly? Is there something I'm missing? And so a lot of the times they'll come to therapy to say, I'm not happy. He's clearly not happy. He's not here. I'm here. So what do I do about it? And we talk about like you can't change him. There's nothing that you can do except for work on yourself. But I
Hmm.
always have to preface that by saying if you go down this path and you choose this journey of working on yourself and being the best version of yourself, you might not get what you think that you want right
Hmm.
now. You might get a healed, evolved version of you that is choosing a higher timeline and looking at him going, wow, I don't think I want this anymore either. Like, I don't, my healed, evolved, I'm not even mad about it now. Like, I'm just happy where I'm at and I know what I want and I feel empowered. And like, that's another life, which really sucks. It really does. So that's why if I can get the couple to therapy, there's so much more to work with. There's so much more to do because there's only
Right.
so much I can do with just her.
Dang, yeah, because obviously you have a lady that's saying now, to the husband like, hey, like we should go to therapy. He's saying like, no, just put out more.
Mm-hmm.
And like that's not the case. And so she comes to you for therapy. She's looking for help to talk to him to bring him along, I'm assuming. And
Mm-hmm.
then in the meantime, you're like, hey, like we can help you, but you warn her because you're like, hey, like you might end up down like, are you prepared that if this doesn't change, like you might wake up one day and be like, I want a divorce,
Mm-hmm.
right? And which would be hard as a person to come in to be like, I just want to come here to get my marriage better, and this lady's saying that I'm gonna now end up being divorced or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Like but it's true. Like I think of that coming back and going, and even people that I know where I've like, they've gone and really worked on themselves and done a lot of internal, fixing and dialogue and whatever, and then that happened when I got sober, right? It was like I woke up and I just got real clear where I was like, I'm not happy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and then I worked on it, I worked on it, I worked on it, and I'm like, okay, like I'm looking around going, great, like I could just pretend everything's great. Like I'm in a really good place. And also, I want to be with somebody that wants to be with me. And that was probably the hardest thing was because it was like a couple years in the making of like after getting sober to be like, where I want to do this, I want to do this. And it was like I'd even suggested therapy and and it was like no. And then I was like, okay. And then it wasn't until I was like, I wanted a divorce that then it was like, well, let's go to therapy, let's do this. I was like, I'm like done now. Like I'm so far down that way that the idea of coming back is not even an option. And so, how do you then like, yeah, like my thing as a man, I'm like, God, like that's hard to hear that, right? That like these ladies are going, because I see it all the time from the men's perspective of where they're talking, and I'm often like trying to be like, hey, have you thought about trying to connect with her or or like do something without, that in mind? Um, how can we help more men to see that there's like more to that they could do?
Yeah, I just think it's willingness to learn. And I think that I mean, at this year's Reclaiming Birth conference, I kind of talked about how it's easy to look at men and say, men are the problem. Men are not the problem. Men are amazing. We need men so much. We need masculine, strong men. And it's, this overarching expectation from society that has put men in this corner to act and be and take a back seat to so much stuff. It's just like shut up and women are stronger. Women now need to prove themselves that they can do everything men can do and they can do everything women can do and men can do and they're capable. Yes, of course we're capable. 100% we're capable, but just because we're capable doesn't mean we want to do it. And
No.
so women are constantly researching and obtaining information on the family system. Men are great, really great at, you lock in on a topic and like finance or like sports or like building a business or carpentry or, fix at something. They can hone in and they can learn if they want to. It's harder to find men that are willing to learn about parenting and learn about marriage and learn about attachment styles and learn about the differences in physiological responses in sexuality. So if men as an entire sex were given that expectation of like we need you to do a little bit more initiative taking with researching things that are beneficial for your relationship and your family, I think that we would find that the expectation shifts where they are learning about spontaneous arousal in men doesn't happen in women. And so that psychoeducation changes, right? It's not that men are stupid. They're not stupid. They're so smart. They're so brilliant and their brains work so differently than women's do. And we need them to use their superpowers to hone in on educating themselves about women, about cycles, about sexuality, about hormones, about ebbs and flows and emotions and capacity and nervous system. And that's just not happening.
Right. It's interesting too, because like they say, and I mean, men, right, like go through like the monthly cycle every day kind
Mm-hmm.
of thing, right?
Morning
Where
to
women,
night.
it's like, the whole, once a month is like that week. Even in that, I think about that where it's like, okay, well, obviously it's not that comfortable during that period week, that full week for ladies, whether, and I mean, we say a week, but maybe it's 4 days, whatever it is. Um, but then it's like if you got half a brain as a man, you're like, if you understand that, you're like, okay, there's this period where now she's like going through, she's shedding, she didn't get pregnant, she didn't do this, but then there's gonna come this period where it's like she's her most fertile. Well, if you're paying attention to that, man, that's the best chance that you're gonna have like an amazing, probably 4 days
Totally.
week. And if you're paying attention to that and you're like, oh, instead of being like, oh, what a bag for that whole time. And then when she's finally at the point, she's like, I'm not attracted to you at all now. You're like, well, what could you do during that period to like make it way better so that after she's like, hey, what's up, dude? And I wonder that all the time. I'm like, why are more guys not paying attention to that? I read this, I mean, a lot of people have read this book, but it's like the oh God, why can't I even think of what it's called now? Um Think and Grow Rich. Sorry, like because we're talking about, but it's like Napoleon Hill. But there's a whole chapter on sex transmutation, is what they call it in the book, and it's basically talking about how, because of course this book's in the 1900s, so it's mostly geared towards men because he interviewed successful men, and why are men so successful like at age 50 and beyond? Like that's really where they start to grow and establish. It's because basically it's not that they're sex drive necessarily drops. It's just that their desire to like invest the creativity to go and do it is like, I'm over that. I'm gonna just focus my energy on like building this business, financial success, go do whatever. And it talks about how like think about when you're like younger and you're dating and you're trying to like woo a girl and like all the things that you'll do to like be creative to make this happen. That energy is still can be used for like something from a business perspective to be like, I'm putting that into like my financial creation. But it's always stuck with me because it's like yeah, when I think back to when I was like 18, 19, 20, that like early dating things and like how much effort you would put in to want to do something for this person that you're trying to like woo, then it's like, well, why don't we do that to our wives? And even as I'm having this, I'm thinking, I'm like, oh man, I could be so much better. Like I know I could, right? And but I want to because it's like then I know that the results is like just a better connection and relationship with my wife. Like we do everything together. It's like so fun. That's why. I mean, she edits the podcast. We
She's
talk. We do a lot of stuff together for business, but like even just running errands and things, I like just want to go with her because I'm like I can spend time with you because I'm no
yes.
longer gone to work all day long. I work from home, which is awesome, right?
And I think that you hit the nail on the head. I think that there's also this expectation that that couples are having sex 4 times a week, every week, all the time, and that's just not the biology of women. Like women are gonna want to have sex when they are most fertile. And then we have like the dynamics of like perimenopause and menopause and what that means. But if you know that there is 4 or 5 ish day period where you're guaranteed to be intimate if you play your cards right, then why aren't you creating this beautiful nest of comfort for this woman for the rest of the month? Like bringing her teas and, touching her body in a non-sexual way and nurturing her and paying attention to her and giving her eye contact, like at the end of the day, that's setting yourself up for the most success. Um, and I don't think a lot of people, I mean, a lot of women don't even understand that their bodies move with the moon and that men's bodies move with the sun. The sun goes up, the sun comes down. The moon cycles itself full to new, and that's the way that a woman's body is meant to work too. And the information just is not. I mean, we live in the age of information, but for some reason, it's just not being accessed by these people for whatever reason. And there's a huge piece missing, and that just breaks my heart because knowing is so powerful, and being able to implement that knowledge could make the biggest difference in your marriage or your relationship.
Yeah. I saw this thing. It was like actually I can't remember. It was a presentation at a church, believe it or not, but it was like this relationship like pastor guy talking. It was over a few days. And it was for like couples counseling like that, and a lot of people that were there just like they were happy, they just wanted to, improve. And at one point it was like talking about like sex, and it was like, well, in order for the wife to like want to like showed it how God built us to be like,
Yin
uniquely
and
different,
yang.
right? Where like if you
Mm-hmm.
want, yeah, for a man to be like affected here, you gotta be down there, but it's the opposite for women. It's like, well, we need to do this like, yeah, give and take kind of thing. And it always made me think about that. I was like, yeah, like it's just a game, like you just have to play it in the way, but to a point where you're like, if some of these things can become just habitual in a relationship that you're doing, or you're just like, being nice to each other, and like some people are just think like you're so dysfunctional. Like, why are you so mad and mad? Like, do you not want to spend time with these people? It's kind of like the parents that have kids where then it's like they can't wait for their kids to go back to school or whatever. And I'm like, why do you want to be parents if you don't want to be around, your kids? Um, when when you think about like what would be some of the best things that you could help men understand so that they could be more connected to their wife? Like to me, it just sounds like a no-brainer, but let's hear it from you. You're the professional.
Anytime I'm sitting in front of a man, I really like to understand what he does in his work, in his business. What is his professional identity? Where does he put all his time and energy? Because that's the key.
Tell me,
Whatever
okay, tell me more about that.
there are analogies that are accessible when you understand a variety of business structures and workplaces that men operate in. Um, And so if I can take an example, even just like sometimes I have to put some thought into it, but if I'm pulling something off the top of my head, we are currently getting our
In the
basement.
investing world, let's use me. In the
And
investing world,
money I'm not so good. I have dyscalculia. So money I'm less good at. But I'm thinking we are drywalling our basement right now,
okay, so
and
trades guys, I can relate to that too. So
trades,
okay.
yes, cement,
Yeah.
concrete. Um so if we think about, let's say, the guys downstairs, they're plastering the wall. Let's say a new product comes out that's going to be like, yes, you can plaster the drywall so quickly. We'll get it up there. It's
Right.
great.
Spreads faster and it dries quicker, and we can sand it the same day. That would
A
be like a dream product. Okay.
dream product, right?
Yeah.
And so it's on the market, and you see the difference in you know, good old boys that are using the old school product and the new guys that are using this new product. And so the new guys are like, yeah, let's speed things up. And the good old boys are going, that product's not going to last. It's going to be, 3 years down the road, and this isn't going to hold up. The paint's going to start chipping. The product is not what you want it to be. But we have this generation that's like, no, 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 speed, speed, speed. Let's go, let's go. And these guys are saying, you're going to regret that. You're not putting in the time and effort to understand what it is that you're using, what it is that you're doing. And so if we think about women's bodies and we're trying to like speed up this process, like, okay, dishes are clean, kids are in bed, you don't have a headache, here's a glass of wine, like, let's go, let's go. And she's going, No, there's a process we have to follow here. And it's, I don't make the rules. This is just the way things go. And we have to, honor the natural process of how things have always been. Why are you trying to medicate me? Or are you trying to, get me to, smoke a joint and relax a little bit, drink a glass of wine? You're trying to speed this up for what? So that I'm disconnected to my body and that I'm not embodied in any of this.
And
And
yeah.
then long term, what does that mean for me and what does that mean for us? That this isn't a genuine, authentic connection.
Yeah, and like you see that a lot, like couples that will, like, they'll only be intimate when, after a date, but where they went out and then she had wine or whatever, right? And then it's like, but for what purpose? And then just to disconnect. Yeah, so it's nice you say that, like to loosen up or whatever, like, oh, just relax. But it's like, but I'm not relaxed in my environment because if I was, I wouldn't need that and I could still connect then,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Damn.
So when working with men, I mean, like that just came to mind just because we're doing drywall. And
But it's a great thing to like as I think about that because my brain even I was like, yeah, that would be great. And then but then you go back to the old school and I'm like, but wait a minute, like what if I had to, like what's the time tested true method and what's the data to back up this new product? Like have we seen
mm,
enough reps, which is like from the gym model. And then it's like, yeah, you know what? When I even in my own life, if I think about like all the times we've been like super connected or not connected, it's like, yeah, I'm to blame every time. Like I know that. It's like without a doubt. And it's like, um, and a lot of men will say like, oh well, blah blah blah. It's like, man, when I can be my best masculine self and I can be providing and we don't have any stress in our financial stress, because let's be real, if you're the man that's like the provider, and your wife is a stay-at-home wife or works part-time or whatever, like mine stays home and she helps me with our business, but she's at home. She's a mother first, right? And a wife and a homemaker because she homeschools the kids. Um, when she's 100% in her feminine energy to the max, she's the greatest wife partner ever around. And if things are disconnected and I can look at it and be like, wait a minute, she was doing some of that masculine type stuff again. That's why she's not right. Like, and it's funny because we can say that just nonchalant, but it's like if you're struggling in your marriage and you're not conscious of those things, then like what are you doing, And like you said, right, you might come do all this from one side or the other. If the other spouse isn't willing to work on themselves, then yeah, you're like, well, the alternative is you might need to go away. How many, I know it's probably rare. Like, do you even have a percentage? How many times is it that a man comes to see you without his wife first and the wife doesn't want to come? Where like it's
um,
the man's problem, where like the man needs to change.
I do have a lot of men that come to therapy individually, but it is because they either have like another couples therapist that's supporting them as a couple, and the
Oh,
man has found me to do their individual work with. And I love working with men that want to be there, like men that are like, tell me more, teach me more. I had no idea. I have one client right now where he's like a sponge. He just wants to understand information so much so he can apply it to his life. And I love that. And it's so powerful. And it gets me, so invested in supporting these clients, which is really, really great. So I do have a large portion of men that come to see me individually. But again, it's because they're already invested in the couples therapy piece. And I'm just kind of helping them outside of that.
now did they go to couples therapy after he started seeing you, or he came and saw you in addition to the couples therapy?
Yeah, so most of the time, if I'm seeing a man individually, it's because they've already started couples therapy somewhere, and I get a referral, let's say, from the couples therapist, or they send the man to me as a referral. But because my niche is mostly with couples, I usually see them together. But again, because I worked in perinatal mental health before I was already seeing a lot of women come in. And that was my number one thing, is that these women would come in and they'd say, I have postpartum depression and I have postpartum anxiety and I had birth trauma. And I'd say, great, where's your partner? Where is your partner? Because this is not a
Mhm.
you thing. This is a systemic thing, and we need to address this. And I just said, I'm done with just seeing women promoting, just seeing women. I need to see the couple because that is where the work needs to be done.
Yeah. And is that a thing too? Like if you're seeing a couple, you would not see an individual like person as well? Or is that
I mean, I would say to them, if we're going to break away and do this, then you have an individual session with me, you have an individual session with me, then we come back together as a couple. Then if you want another individual session and you want another individual session, then we come back together as a couple.
right? So it would be like a both thing. It wouldn't be like you're doing a couple session and then next week you're doing just one spouse and then a couple
No.
session and then one spouse. It just doesn't really work that great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wasn't sure if that was like a in because when you said that they're seeing as a couple, then they're coming over solo. That was probably why. Like he's just
Yeah.
looking to do some more. Paper money's losing power, but real money, it's been trusted for 5,000 years. When banks print, inflation steals, and markets shake, gold and silver stay solid. Don't wait for headlines, own what's real. Visit learnwealthcycles.com and start building freedom with physical silver and gold today. Um, and so then when like let's talk about the success then. Like what comes out of this for couples? I mean, deeper than just yeah, you're getting to get it on more often with your wife, which is probably the number one for guys reason why they would want to go. It actually blows my mind as I think about that, even as I say that. I'm like, so the whole point of like you're thinking about possibly having therapy and like the wife probably wants to go because then she's going to get to do all this emotional connection stuff and all the bigger thing, and ultimately the guy just wants to get like have more intimacy with his wife. And it's like if the trade-off is like you go to therapy once every 2 weeks or whatever and then you get to spend like an hour or two and then you know that you're getting to do that. I'm like all the other stuff that a man does, I know you still have to do that, but like it just seems like it would be so easy. I'm like, as a man, like, why would you not want to go? You're like, hey, there's a pretty good chance, like, after like a month or two, we're gonna start making out more often. Like, I'm gonna go put some time in. And yet
Yeah.
they buck it. It's like, I'm not going.
All the
Like,
time.
why?
Yeah.
Like, why, why would you
And
not
you know what
go?
the wild thing too is, that like there's this narrative that women are prude and square, but like women want to also have sex. Like they're saying like, you don't think I want this? I want this, but you are not understanding how to operate the Rubik's cube properly here. Like my body is complex. I know my body is complex. I've spent my whole life trying to understand my body, and usually women only in their postpartum chapter are learning their bodies. And so they're not sitting there saying like, this is so easy, why don't you get it? They're saying, I'm learning, you should be learning alongside me as well. And like, I want this. So like, let's figure this out. Let's go to this person that can help us have better conversations, that can help us in our non-sexual intimacy, that can help us not scream and yell at each other every time we bring something forward. So I think that when we can work through the defenses and bring the defenses down and work through that inner child language of feeling not enough or too much, then we can actually access the meat of it all.
Yeah. Yeah. And like when that happens, then life just gets so much better for the
Mm-hmm.
couple. And then all the other areas start to improve.
Mm-hmm.
Like I mean, I kind of it's serious stuff. It's like I am in a way better place when we're connected because I am an energetic person, like in like feeling the energy, not just like being a high energy all the time, but like when we're connected, I like want to get out of bed and I want to go do more and crush more, and it's vice versa, right? Like I
She's your
understand that it's
muse.
like, what's that?
She's your muse.
Yeah, yeah. And when you said you were speaking at this year's conference, did
Mm-hmm.
you speak to Women's Day, or were you speaking to the men on the Men's Day, or did you do both?
So they didn't that wasn't the structure this year. They just did all together days.
What?
Hmm.
Oh, I misunderstood that. I thought they did a like a
No, they changed
VIP.
that.
Oh, really? Oh, I didn't even get that when I talked to her on the thing. So they
Mm-mm,
didn't have like a men's breakfast or anything like that, or like a section where they just talked to the men.
mm-mm,
Oh, really? How come?
mm-hmm.
I thought that that's what Kristen said they did. Weird. Okay.
I think that was the original plan for sure. I just think that the speaker. I mean, I don't know why that. I don't know why it
Yeah,
changed. I can't speak to that. But I think it was really great having everybody in the room at the
for
same
sure.
time because
Yeah.
I do know that a lot of my talk would have been geared towards just men, and having women in the room with the men at the same time and having partners next to each other, I think was very powerful.
Hmm. Yeah, especially if like when you're talking to the men, but then to have the ladies present to then, feel that. I like the conference so much, and I mean, I don't know, maybe next year we can go again, but it was like yeah, to hear that they were doing like a men's part, which and they had more men there, it sounded like this year,
Yeah,
which
my
was
husband
really
went
good.
too.
Oh, really?
Hmm.
Oh, neat.
Hmm.
Yeah. I Yeah, especially from the birth side of things, like looking back, I mean, older and like whatever, we're not having kids anymore, but just had I known that all that stuff existed prior to us ever having kids, it would have made my experience with the birth process so much better. And I really tried to like learn a little bit more, even then, because I've always been that way, wanting to, yeah, like how can I contribute to this situation in a more positive light that's going to make my life better? I never understood that with men that, or anybody for that matter, men or women that wouldn't, they got a problem and then they're like, yeah, but I'm not going to do anything to fix it. I'm
Hmm.
just going to complain. You know, like why?
Lots of those people.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, so when a couple comes to you and it's like yeah, that's the standard, right? The wife is so when they do come together, right? And they're like now they're both focused on um coming to you. They what is the I'm like, oh, this is
No pun intended. No.
get your head out of the gutter, Luke. So what are some of the first steps when a new couple comes on board with you? What kind of stuff could they expect?
I essentially just, go over what brings you here, what's the dynamic. I am assessing polarity between the couple as they're talking and as they're explaining things, and most of the time I can decipher whether or not polarity is an issue. I kind of bring polarity to the forefront. I ask them if they know anything about it. If they don't, I kind of just break down. I'm seeing this. I'm sensing that these are your needs. These are your needs. Where's the mismatch? We kind of talk a little bit about family dynamics, childhood dynamics, and then we discuss what the wound of origin was in the relationship to have things go sideways, and we go from there. Really, I mean, like, it's all individualistic. It's all catered to what makes sense for that couple, and I don't do
For
cookie
sure.
cutter approach anything.
No.
um
What
and
did you mean by polarity?
Polarity. So polarity is that masculine feminine dynamic.
Right, because then you can figure out you're like, well, hey, part of the problem here, man, is that your wife is very much in the masculine role in this conversation, and you're like actually showing up as this feminine man.
No, they don't like that though. So I
No,
have
of
to be
course they
very
don't. But that's
very
often, I mean, like they wouldn't like it. You didn't say it, I did. So if you're hearing this and you're having a problem in your relationship, man, you're showing up like a lady. No, it's like, but for real, it
Mhm.
probably it probably is, you know.
And we want men to be emotional. So it's not about telling men like you aren't allowed to have emotions. That's not what this is. The
No.
problem becomes when your emotions become the center stage and theatrical, and you're missing her natural emotional state because yours is overtaking it.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah. Like I don't know, that kind of got me thinking like, well, I mean, it's yeah, you see it so often, and I can't believe how many of my male friends that I talk to that, you know, I mean, I said it earlier, where I'll be like, they'll complain, and it's like, okay, but like, what else is going on, right? And it's like I'm not gonna get into just a bitch session about, your partner, because I don't complain about my partner to other people, because that's like the least thing that is
Sacred.
going to be helpful to your marriage. But sometimes when it gets, I think that most people don't complain until it gets really bad.
Hmm.
And then it's like even the worst time to be complaining, because now you're like, now you're just really complaining. And it's like, I used to have this quote hanging up in my other office where it's like, if you're coming to me with a problem without a solution, you're just complaining.
Yep.
And it's like, well, if I had a solution, I wouldn't. I'm like, no, but you just need to think about it. Like, you need to come up with some ideas of what a solution could be. Yes, you have a problem, but what could, be some form of solution to like at least move it ahead and have a conversation. And it's hard in life too when you think like, we're married, and it's just so easy to just throw relationships away now, right? Where like we don't work hard at them. This has been, and I wanted to bring this up earlier, like how bad, because I think it is, but how bad is porn for
Oof.
relationships?
So, porn has taken this interesting turn in my professional career because I will confidently say during my undergrad, everything was very pro sex work, um, very, very liberal, I can confidently say. And that is the framework that I was taught in academia, not unlike in any other academic programs in post secondary. And so there was a big chapter in my starting up my private practice where I promoted couples watching pornography. I was very pro porn, so pro porn that I had an affiliate link to an adult film director, and I was giving clients access to this adult content that she would create. It was very feminist rooted adult content, and I would say, "Here, go watch this. Here, go watch that." And then I became a mom. And then I was like, wow, like I have a son. I have two sons now, but I at that point I had a son, and I said like, how is any of this informing his brain for dopamine purposes, but like his idea of women and what to expect in sexual relationships. And it really caused me to have, alongside of other things, an awakening, so to speak, and like, why is this planted here? What is the purpose of all of this? And then I started going down the rabbit hole and looking at the research that has been coming out about the effects of porn on the brain and how it's impacting relationships. And so, whereas, probably a while ago I would have been on a podcast talking about how it's so great for your marriage, I am now, the pendulum swings. And so now I'm sitting here saying it's not. Don't even open a screen. If you can't control your lust and if you can't control those impulses, that is something that you need to start with first and foremost. And I will sit in front of men and I will say in couples therapy, how often do you use porn? And I can guarantee that they're not being honest about the frequency that they're using it. And it usually goes back to, the time that they've hit puberty and how it's been a part of their lives and how it's been a part of their sexual education, etc. And I will say, well, your first piece of homework is cold turkey. Done. You're done with pornography. There will be none. There will be no images. There will be no videos. Um, and they'll say, like, what happens if my wife sends me something? And I said, even then, there's no actual connection to your wife in that moment just because it's her, just because it's a video of her. If it's not human to human connection, don't do it. Don't want it. It's not helping the brain. If you can fast forward it to a point that, gets you excited, it's not human connection. So we're going to take it slow. We're going to do it the way our bodies are meant to do it and meant to engage in it. And that's the only source that you're going to receive. And that alone creates less tension, less angst, less resentment, more understanding that they have to like hunt for these resources, they have to put the energy in, and it creates a better overall dynamic.
Yeah, which is like actually pretty easy to recognize and see, like when you see or I listen and hear from certain people and they'll share um their experiences with it or whatever or their experience in their relationship and then you like ask that question and it's like you don't see the connection to the downfall of like your relationship, that it's like not there. You're like expecting her to like, yeah, even when we were talking earlier, like, well, speed up, like just be here. It's like that's not real. Like that's not real at all. And so yeah, it really, especially as a younger mind, right? Like, I mean, as a man and younger, I've seen that stuff and whatever. And if you think about that into like what that is in a real relationship, it's not even close to real. So it's like, don't even do it. Even giving up booze like 13 years ago. So like my son, he's 17 now. So like he was only 4 when I stopped drinking, and my daughter was only 6 months old, so she's never has no recollection. He called me new home dad and acreage dad when we were little because I moved in. We moved in May long weekend to our like new house, and I stopped drinking in June. So like a month later, it was like 3 weeks actually. Um, and so he was young enough to remember just like all of a sudden new home dad had all this energy and was there and was playing and like he just was like new home dad's way better than acreage dad. And I think back to that about like, yeah, they didn't see it in the house. They've never seen it. Like they don't know other than like their mom, will have wine sometimes or whatever, but they recognize it because it's like so different now. And I think about like, yeah, that was the huge um disconnect or like it's a new timeline for my family and future generations because like my dad was an alcoholic, my grandparents were alcoholics, like so it was just a standard thing, drinking and seeing it and partying around the weekends or whatever, and then we don't have that in our house, so it's very different, and so they don't get that. So then you come to think about something like pornography, and like if kids are not exposed to it or around it, then their relationships are just going to be that much better. And it's like actually sickening now how easy accessible it is, like with smartphones and
Totally.
everything else that just they could get it on anything. And it's like, oh man, I follow a page called Exodus Cry. It's
Mm-hmm.
like it's all about like helping they're like trying to bring down the porn industry, but
Mm-hmm.
also like helping victims of like
Human
human
trafficking.
trafficking and all this stuff. And just sometimes like listening to the stories or whatever that you see on there is like, yeah, that makes me never want to watch any of that stuff or condone it at all. And that's just always my hope is I'm like I think about my son and being like I don't know if he does like watches it, like I hope he doesn't because I know how badly it can distort a brain, right?
Yeah.
Because even thinking back to being like a young teenager and like having access to it and looking at it, um and then at the same time like I think of my daughters being like they're going to get older and they're going to be with a man eventually, and as they get to become adults, and then it's like, well, I hope that those boys like grew up and learned the right way too, right?
And you're
It's
going to have him over for dinner and you're going to look him dead in the eye and you're going to say, "So what is your browser history like?"
yeah, yeah.
And he's going to poop his pants.
It's actually a good one. Hey, give me your phone. I want to see your browser history.
Totally. 100%. 100%.
Yeah, that's actually
We had living in a subdivision. So I grew up on acreage. I grew up on 40 acres with horses. Nobody ever wanted to come to my house because I lived in the middle of nowhere. And so everybody wanted to go to the cool kids' houses that lived in town. So now my kids are living in, suburbia, and I hate it for them. It's not ideal. The hard part is you're surrounded by so many families, and we are pretty free range with our kids. Like, I will sit outside on the porch, but I let them bike up and down on the streets, and I don't let them go into people's houses. They're not allowed in people's houses, but they're allowed to play and wrestle on front lawns and such. And there was a family a couple summers ago where there were 5 kids in the family, and the parents just didn't parent them. There was zero parenting, and there was older boys, 12, 13 years old. And the boys that were my son's age were exposed to pornography through their older brother. Um,
Right.
and I didn't know this right away, but it became very apparent after having these boys, play on my front lawn and seeing that they had access to cell phones. And it broke my heart that I had to have that conversation with my, grade 2, grade 3 son before I ever thought I would ever have to do that. And obviously age appropriate, but just the conversation around internet safety and the things that he was seeing. And I actually had to ask him, like, were you seeing naked bodies? Were there any pictures of naked bodies? And um, he said that he never saw any, but he did say that his friend his age talked about how he's seen that, and how his brother looks at it. And it brings me back to this place where at one point in time we could house and take in children in the 90s. The parents that didn't do the greatest job, there was always that friend's home that those kids could go to, and those parents would kind of parent those children. We can't necessarily do that now. I couldn't bring this child into my home for fear of what he would impose on my children and what he would teach my children and how what they would have access to. It's just not the same generationally, and I blame those parents. And I don't want my children around poorly parented children. I just don't. And that entire summer and that entire experience stole something from my son that he will never get back, that level of innocence, all because parents don't care about what their children are accessing on the internet. And there's not conversations about the impacts of pornography on young children's brains.
Yeah, I never thought of that because I was gonna like challenge you to be like, well, no, you could be the better parent. But as soon as you said that about like, well, now they've got, they're like, in your son's room or whatever, and then they're looking at it, you're like, well, if we didn't bring them in, they never would have saw that. I agree. Like, we really like to make sure that our kids are like hanging around not just kids that are good kids, but like that the parents are, people that we want to see. And my wife's been really good at like with the homeschool community and like welcoming like kids and bringing people, or bringing the kids over. And like our house has become, we always wanted it to be like our house is the place to be. Like I want it that way. We're out in the country, so it's like yes, parents have to drive out, but I want our kids to want to be here, to
Yep.
go out and have a fire, and to go out and play because as they get older, those girls, then this is the place that they're just used to hanging out at. They're like, hey, we're having a fire. Come out here. I'm like, yeah, I want you having a fire at 18 or 17 out in my yard, not going to somebody else's house where I'm not in control. And it's different when it's like I'm like being controlling to say come versus they're like, yeah, come to our place. We've just always done this. This is like the best ever. And like my parents are fun and they're cool. And like my wife's really involved with the girls' lives. And so it's like they want to be here though, right?
Yep.
Like our kids are generations of living room kids where we were bedroom kids.
Totally.
Right?
I say
We
that
want to
same
sneak
thing too.
away. And like my kids are always out in the living room. Like I'm in the office or a bedroom because I'm like, I have to get away from the noise sometimes. But they're like out there just doing their jam. And I love it because it's like they're on the couch, they're talking, they're doing school when they have their, we have 3 bedrooms in the basement, so we don't really have like a living room, downstairs room. So when they have their teenage girl sleepovers, they're out in the living room. They like pull up their mattresses, we push the couch back. There's like 6 or 7 of them sleeping out in the living room, and they're loud. And like I love it because I'm like, right, they're here, they're
They're
having
safe.
fun, they're safe. And it's weird because like on one hand, I'm like, I don't want my girls sleeping anywhere. Like you don't know who's there, right? You don't know if they've got like older brothers or the brother has a friend or an uncle or in and it is interesting because I'm like, nope, but they can all stay here.
Yep.
And and I know who's here, and I know that I would kill somebody if they hurt any of my girls or any of their girlfriends. Like I'm not, and it's nice to me because all of these young girls are like they're like hugging me and doing their thing because they know they just feel safe here. Like they know that I'm like another dad for
Totally.
them because most of them don't have dad. Like they're like or they're from like single mom households or whatever. Their dads like are around but not really. And so they're just like, oh, this is what it's like. And then even for me, I'm like, right, then they can like see what this is like for even their future, like partners and stuff like that, to like have somebody that's around that wants to be there and go and do that. And um, it's funny because when we talked about masculine and feminine energy, it's like I'm surrounded by females all the time in my life, and you'd think like it would just like naturally, r run off, as what people would say. But I'm like, no, it's all the more reason to be even more masculine and more in, that state of like being in, my masculine energy to like put in a good,
To be the
um,
container.
yeah.
And the way I say it is like you can be the strong oak and the women are the storm, the wind, sometimes you can feel a soft breeze and it just kind of like ruffles the feathers on the tree. And sometimes there's full-blown storms that test the depth and the strength of those roots of that tree. And the storm
Hmm.
wants to know, are you going to crack under pressure? Are you going to break? Is there going to be a mess to
Yeah.
clean up after?
Yeah, my wife used to always say that. She's like, I'm like a hurricane, like she is what she used to always say. And then she'd always call me concrete because it's like, concretes can withstand that storm. And yeah, and it's funny how we think about it because it's like if it's ever off off of where like our dynamic should be, it's just like, right, I'm not being that concrete safety thing that can handle this storm. Like, all right, come here, like, and I can usually recognize it pretty quickly for myself because again, it's a lot of that self-development and work, and to be like, oh, I'm just really not myself today because of all these other things that are affecting me in
Yep.
in that way. And usually we're pretty good, quick to get back on track because we just know we're like, we a lot of times it's like, hey, that's just the devil putting little things in to derail us right now. Like she's been so good for me in growth, and like recognizing that when something's like off, it's like, hey, all of these things were stacking up to be so good. And then this one thing came in, and it's nothing to do with us. Like we've never actually had really an issue that's the two of us. It's always external circumstances that's pulled one of us one way or another, where then now maybe we're butting heads, but it's really not because of anything that one of us did to each other. It's because our energy was off from something different. And something happened the other day, and she just, I was like, "Rah, rah, 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 rah," like in not towards her, but just in general. And she just looked at me. She's like, "Hey, that happened because of all these other good things. This is just to derail you. It's actually got nothing. It's black and white. It had something to do with like my ex and like this." But I was just like, my energy was bad. She's like, "Hey, it's because we've hit all these good strides that something's being. You just have to overcome it." And then as soon as I was like, "Right, thanks," like it was just that's all I needed was just that little reminder, right? That little reset. And then it's like good. But if I think back to like previous relationships or other friends where she's come in to give that little subtle hint to just say, "Hey, dude, like, let's get back on track," where that would then now cause this tension in a couple. And it's like, but if you're actually truly coming to each other, knowing that you want the best for each other in your relationship, and then when something's off, if you can just like listen to that person better to like get on track, then your whole life will continue to improve together.
Yep.
Yeah, crazy.
That's
Um,
exactly it.
so when it comes to your business as it is right now
Hmm.
and where you're at, what's some stuff that you want to do to like grow and expand it? Where do you see yourself in the next few years?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, my human design is a manifester, which means that I'm really great at coming up with ideas, like business ideas, like it's my literal job. I'm constantly coming up with them. But the best way I work is being able to come up with my ideas and hand them over to a generator or a manifesting generator, human
Mhm.
design, so they can just go do that thing. Come consult back with me once you've started the process. I'll say yay or nay, but like take my idea and run with it. That isn't the case in my current business structure. So I try my best to take on projects that fill me up as much as possible. So, on the flip side of helping couples in turmoil, I'm also a reverend and I officiate weddings.
Okay.
And I do that on the weekends and this mostly the summer and the fall. That's kind of like peak wedding season. And I like being able to access couples before any kind of damage control is needed and kind of get them in the groove of like, let's talk about premarital counseling. Let's talk about what you want your, wedding to look like. Let's talk about how we can stay on top of, couple dynamics post wedding. Oh, you want to start having a baby. Let's talk about what that looks like. And so I've already established a relationship with them pre marriage, pre wedding, even. And so I'm kind of following them through their timeline of life, which feels really amazing. Being a reverend also gives me a chance to do things like naming ceremonies for their new babies that come, or house blessings when they buy homes. And so I get to be a part of these couples' entire uh, journeys really through life, which is pretty special. And that is something that I do because I'm spiritually called to do that, not for
Okay.
any profitable purpose. So when it comes to building my business, ideally I would like to have more associates join my team, more like-minded associates, more therapists that can kind of take over my clinical load, but also who understand the authenticity that I bring to my clinic. And so, like I had mentioned, I have Molly as an associate right now, and I'm very, very particular about the therapists that come on to my clinic. And Molly is so amazing, and she's so willing to learn, and she's extremely like minded. And she's not at a point in her life where she has children yet, but she's so wise beyond her years. And um, I'm so grateful to have her because the clinic is building this capacity where I feel so confident sending clients off to work with her. So I would love to have a man join the clinic as a therapist so that we can really create this beautiful polarity dynamic within the therapists themselves. And when I say, we have a really great male therapist right now, I'm referring to male therapists that either A, I don't feel super confident in, or B, I don't know how they work in session. I've had conversations with them, but I don't know what sessions look like. And so I would love to have an in-house male therapist that I feel can embody that mature masculine energy, and I can just hand off a male client that I'm seeing in a couple dynamic to him.
Right. And I think that's awesome. And we touched on this earlier. You do a lot of your therapy sessions online?
Yeah. So
Yeah. Okay. So
I do work out of a clinic a couple times a month, but really for me, that's just about networking because private practice can be very isolating. So
mhm.
I like being in the clinic space. I like interacting with the chiropractors and the naturopathic doctors and just having a
Yeah.
touch point with some
But
people
like
that
from working with or bringing into your clinic setting, it could be a male therapist that's anywhere because your target demographic of client is talking to you over Zoom.
totally.
That's interesting. Okay. I don't know. It's funny. I like literally don't even in my brain. I'm like, I don't even know if I even know any male therapists. Isn't that's interesting too, right? It's like, oh,
I
like,
do know quite a few. None of them would pass the polarity test 100%. None of them have, none of them would. But I do find a lot of really great men's coaches embody exactly what I'm looking
mm,
for in that they're just missing the piece of being a registered therapist, which I need because most people want to use their benefits in therapy.
yeah, that's the thing too. I even remember when I was like going through the divorce, I was like looking for literature to read, right? And then all these books that were like meant for divorces were like written by women, basically for women. And then even the ones that were written for men, I was like, it's written by, like, I don't want to read as a man. I don't want advice from a woman right now because I'm like angry or whatever. I'm like, I want something as a man, and I had actually wrote this whole book on divorce And I never published it. Like I went like halfway through. We started like getting it published and stuff, and then I just stopped. I never ever picked it back up. It's interesting because it was like I wanted to write it from a man's perspective on like because I had done it 4 years later as almost like a healing thing.
Yeah.
I didn't sleep for 2 days and I wrote the book like over the 2 days and just like poured everything out and then I like sent it off to a publisher to start like working on like putting it together. Um, my current wife actually like sort of challenged me to do it like when we were just chatting. I was talking and she's like, "Oh, you should write this book." And I was like, "All right." And then I just did. Um, but it's interesting because yeah, like I would go I think as a couple to go, it would be like no problem to see either or, you know? But like I think as men, it's like it'd be nice to go and talk to a man about the things, but then still have like enough awareness, which I mean, I would assume if they're a therapist that they would still, you know, be able to talk the man to like doing what's like the best thing, not be like, yeah, she's crazy, you know, or whatever. But like, uh, yeah, huh. Yeah, and I guess but it's probably a more a female dominant um uh career, right?
Yeah, or effeminate men, yes.
Yeah, that was going to be my other thing without saying it, but yeah, like probably they're just like effeminate men, and then I'm like, well, I don't want to talk to that guy either, you know?
Yeah, and you know what? Dr. Stu did a great job challenging me at the last conference, and I even said it on stage. I am not the best person to be standing on stage talking to men about the problem with men. I don't feel well equipped as a woman to be standing here saying that. And I got off stage and he looked at me and he said, "Don't say that about yourself again." And he said it in the
Mhm.
podcast too. He said, that would be like me saying that I'm not qualified enough to be working in obstetrics. And I am qualified and I can tell women how to birth babies. And you are qualified and you can tell men how to show up in their relationships. So I'm
Yeah.
working on that imposter syndrome a little bit, but I do feel confident in my ability to educate men as a more masculine energied woman. I do feel like I can meet them where they're at in that sense. But I really, really, really would like to have that additional male therapist piece on in the clinic space.
Right. And you said you can think of some men, but they're just like coaches or that kind of stuff. Like were they like, you know, business coach or lifestyle coach, but they don't
Mm-hmm.
have the designation. That's the other thing too that I actually hate about university and schools and
I
stuff. Where
know.
like I need to have these letters behind my name, but you could be like have everything possible that's like just great, but then you just can't do it, you know? It's like and then they're gonna go and then spend 4 years, you know, maybe learn and then not be as good as they are currently or something. Like,
And again, it's just a fear tactic, right? Like when I work with clients, I no longer come from a headspace of like, oh, I'm not allowed to say that, or oh my God, they could report me for saying that, when it's really just holding them accountable. And at this point, if a client ever would like to report me for holding them accountable or me saying something that pissed them off, I would say, whatever, bring it on, make your allegations, I'll deal with them as they come. But that looming, I mean, the same with Kristen, that looming expectation of like you adhere to our expectations and you adhere to our rules and you act like good little soldiers, that's exhausting. And I would prefer not to have to do that, to be quite honest.
yeah. Well, and I think that's where, like, even in my own like career, why I like to say like I operate in the gray area. I'm not a financial planner. I'm not an advisor. I've never done those things. So I'm not beholden to all of that stuff. I'm like, here's the information. Here's what we're doing to help people. If it works for you, great. And then we help people. You know, I got a text tonight, which just before the call, which was awesome. This client had like texted me. She's like, is this accurate? What I'm seeing on my account because it says 90,000 and I put 65,000 in there like 2 months ago. And I'm like, yeah, that's probably pretty accurate because of what's happened. And she's like, it's been sitting around 65,000 for 5 years. I'm like, yeah, because you were in the wrong assets, you know? And like, and I say all that because then once we shift from metal back into like probably real estate, when real estate corrects itself, that's what we'll look to do with our clients. I'm going, okay, how can I help my clients the best with this next cycle? And I was talking to a mortgage broker the other day who's a client, and we were talking about and strategizing to build like a fund because I just was like thinking bigger. I'm like, can I build a fund where we buy like, $10 million buildings and stuff like that? And then how will that look? What do I need to do to like get ready for that? And she's like, well, if we're doing this and this and this, like, yeah, if you were a broker, then you would be able to do these, but then you're beholden to all these rules and legislation and whatever. And she's like, and you don't strike me as somebody that wants to do that. And I'm like, well, I don't. I'd rather just find the investments and be like, we can do this. And she's like, then I can help you because somebody has to put it together. But if you just say, huh, I have this thing, and then we have these clients, then you can connect the two of them. And then I'm like, oh. Okay. And she's like, and then I can just give you, we can work out an arrangement for a referral. And I was like, perfect. Because then I can just say this is not a financial advice because then I can operate in that space, right?
Love
And
that.
so, um, yeah, that would be the tough part. I think probably like you said, for any of these guys, then they wouldn't want to go off and do this course because then they would not be able to do some of the other things that they do, which is really unfortunate because it's like they could do a lot of good as well, right?
Yes. Yeah, and I hope that my own attempt at calling, self-labeling as a rogue therapist is kind of identifying that gray area where, you go on the social work website and you see all of the current legal proceedings with the therapists that have had infractions, and there are therapists that have had sex with their clients, have sold drugs to their clients. I'm like, no, 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 that is black. That is very black.
Yeah, that's not
Uh,
rogue.
no, that is not rogue. That is deep and dark and not anything that I would ever dip my toe into. But the rogue area is like, you want to talk nutrition? Let's talk nutrition because I have an understanding of nutrition. You want to talk fitness? Let's talk fitness. You want to talk polarity? You want to use terms like masculine, feminine. The college probably doesn't like that. I don't really care. This is how I operate, and these are the people that I'm working with, and I'm totally okay with that.
Right. Yeah. No, that's super awesome. So Ashley, where can clients find you?
Uh, with my phone glued to my hand, it would be on Instagram for sure. So my Instagram handle is at therogue.therapist. My clinic is at mindonline.ca and also www.mindonline.ca. And my ministry is at Heart and Hearth Ministry.
Sweet.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I hope some people find you online because I know that you've got a great art and I know that you've got a lot of
Thank
knowledge
you.
in there and you love helping people. And I'm just grateful that you could come on the show and share some insight with my audience. And I appreciate you. And I look
Thank
forward
you.
to when we can see you again.
Yeah, I look forward to seeing you too. Thank you so much for trusting me.
Oh man. Yeah. Thank you very much. When a system shakes, paper wealth disappears overnight. But real wealth, it doesn't flinch. Gold and silver have outlasted every currency ever printed. The question isn't if this next storm comes, it's what will you do when it does. Visit learnwealthcycles.com. You too can own what's real.